up. Stand up for your rights.
You can join us.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up.
There we go.
Don't give up the fight.
Now, preacher man, don't tell me that heaven is under the earth.
Earth.
I know that you don't know what life is really worth.
Worth.
Not all that glitters is gold, and half the story has never been told. Now you see the light.
What you gonna do?
We're gonna stand up for our rights.
Get up, stand up.
Stand up for your rights.
Oh yeah,
Stand up.
most people think. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Most people think the great God will come from the sky.
Sky.
Take away everything. Make everybody feel high. But if you know what life is worth, you would look for yours on earth. And now you'll see the light.
What you gonna do?
Gonna stand up for your rights.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
We're sick and tired of the ism, schism game. Die and go to heaven in Jesus' name. We know and we understand Almighty God is an African man. You can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So now we see the light.
What we're gonna do?
We're gonna stand up for our rights.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up.
Yeah.
Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight. Don't give up the fight.
Never give up the fight.
Never give up the fight.
All right.
Now don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. I see some of you humming, just singing. Don't worry about a thing,
Yeah.
'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Here we go. I woke up this morning, smiled with the rising sun.
Yeah.
3 little birds are singing on my doorstep, are singing sweet melodies, melodies pure and sweet, saying, this is the message to you. So don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright.
Singing,
Don't worry about a thing, 'Cause every little thing is gonna be all right.
I rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds sitting on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, the melodies pure and true, saying,
this is my message to you.
Singing, don't worry
About a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right.
singing, don't worry
About a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right.
Rose up this morning, smiled with the rising sun. 3 little birds sitting on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, a melody's true and pure, saying,
This is my message to you.
singing,
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right.
singing,
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right. I rise up this morning,
yeah.
smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds are sitting on my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you.
singing, don't worry
Don't worry
About a thing,
about a thing, 'cause every little thing's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right.
singing, don't worry
Don't worry
about a thing.
'cause every little thing is gonna be all right. 'Cause every little thing is gonna be all right. 'Cause every little thing is gonna be all right.
Good morning, Wosay. So good to see everybody. Good to see Brother Jahi, Sister Sia, Brother Kukepra, and Sister Kara back from their travels, safe and sound. I trust they gave Brother Bakare a good send-off, so we give thanks. This is the time in the Wosay community for the historical tribute, and with the historical tribute, we strive to keep at least 5 generations of history of our people. And so often we read about the giants, the people that made major imprints on American society and in our African American history. But here, through these tributes, we have the opportunity to go back and find some of those ancestors that were not as well recognized, not as well known as some of the really big names and great, but yet at the same time they made tremendous contributions. And in so doing, we get insights into the lives and the impact that just fairly regular, everyday black people were making around the time that they did. So this morning we're gonna take a look at a brother named Phillip Reed. How many of you have ever heard of Phillip Reed? Right, neither had I. Phillip Reed was born a slave around 1820 in Charleston, South Carolina. He came to be a master craftsman and an artisan. And he played the thing that kind of keeps his name around is that he played a major role in the casting of the Statue of Freedom that sits atop of the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., of course. This Statue of Freedom is the crowning feature on top of the dome of the U.S. Capitol, and it was hoisted into place on December the 2nd, 1863. It was amid great celebration, and there was a 35-gun salute. It was commissioned in 1855, and the full-size plaster model of the Freedom was completed by an American sculptor named Thomas Crawford. And this American, strangely enough, he had a studio in Rome, Italy. But he suddenly died. He was commissioned in 1855, and he died in 1857. Before he had completed the model, but it was before the model had left his studio. So his widow shipped the model, and it was packed into 6 crates, and she shipped it to Washington, D.C. It finally arrived. It was in late March of 1859. And so the model was then assembled and was put on display in the old hall of the house, which is now called the National Statuary Hall. Later on in May, around 1860, there was a self-taught sculptor named Clark Mills. And this Mills was awarded the contract by the Secretary of the War to cast this Freedom piece in his foundry, which was just inside the District of Columbia. Because remember, what arrived was a plastic model. And so now they had to get the model into a foundry and get it cast into the final material of iron. So the first step to get the model over to Mr. Mills' foundry was to disassemble the plastic model, because the statue had been shipped into his they needed to separate it rather into his 5 main sections. So after I want to say statue, it's a dome. After the dome piece arrived at the Capitol, it was an Italian sculptor that was charged with the task of assembling it. But however, when it came time to separate these sections so that it could be moved, the Italian sculptor balked and demanded more money. And so all of a sudden things were kind of brought to a standstill, because the piece was fairly intricate, and so people couldn't figure out how to disassemble it. They couldn't figure out how to disassemble it because they couldn't get access to the connecting bolts, the way the model was sealed. And so, well, Lord and behold, it took it took a slave to figure it out. And Phillip Reed, he was an enslaved person at that time, and he figured out how to gain access to these connecting bolts by using a block and tackle. And this is a pulley assemble for you all that may not be that familiar with it, but it's a rope and pulley assemble that was configured in such a way that he was able to lift the piece at its center point. And when he lifted at the center point, the various sections receded and exposed the connecting bolts. And so then they was able to disconnect it and transport it to Mr. Mills' foundry. Now, once it got there, the government had paid Mills something like $400 a month. They supplied all his materials, his fuel, and his labor to cast this statue. Now, because of this arrangement, the names of all the craftsmen and all the laborers were recorded each day in Mills' report. Phillip Reed, like I said, he was an enslaved person at this time, but he was listed as a laborer and was paid the handsome fee of $1.25 a day, while the other laborers were only paid $1 a day. So he was making like 25% more than they were. So The list doesn't really give clear evidence into whether these laborers were free or they were enslaved. So, to move along a little bit, on April the 16th in 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed an act abolishing the involuntary servitude, and the District of Columbia and the district slave owners were allowed to petition for compensation. Clark Mills, who he owned Phillip Reed at that time. He petitioned for compensation he had 11 slaves, including Mr. Reed. And he gives us a description of Reed so we get some insights into the type of person that he was. He was a 42-year-old mulatto person, and they say he was somewhat short in stature, but he was in good health, and that he had a smart mind. He was a good foundry worker. And Mills was asking like $1,500 compensation for him, but the government only paid him $350. So, according to the materials that I found on this person, is that Mr. Reed we don't know what he actually witnessed, the assembly of the Statue of Freedom atop the Capitol Dome, but he was a free man when the last piece of it was put in place in December of 1863. 2 years later, in 1865, author S.D. With, he wrote in a paper called The Federal City that Mr. Reed, the former slave, is now in business for himself and highly esteemed by all who know, and list him along with his wife Jane, who he had married in 1862. He had 2 kids. He had a son, and he had a 2-year-old son. The death record state that he lived into his 70s, and he died in February the 6th, 1892. Then he was laid to rest, and he went through a series of internments. He was first laid to rest at the Graceland Cemetery, which is fairly close to the Capitol. And so he was later removed from there in 1895, and he was interred into the Columbia Harmony Cemetery. And then still, that was not enough. That was just not sufficient enough. And he was reburied finally in the National Harmony Memorial Park. And that was in 1959. And then on April the 16th of this year, which was the 152nd anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation signing, a memorial plaque was dedicated to Mr. Phillip Reed in the cemetery that he now serves as his final resting place, which again is the National Harmony Memorial Park Cemetery. So we give thanks for the spirit and the lacks of Mr. Reed, even though a bonded and captive person, still the power of a human being and all of the intellect and all of the energy and the potential that comes with that allowed him as a slave to have a great mind, a great analytical mind for working with metal and putting and taking things apart. So we dedicate this historical tribute to Mr. Phillip Reed. May his spirit live long in the history and in the memory of our people. Ashe. It's Reed. It might be, some spelling is R-E-I-D, others is R-E-E.
No.
Oh, we can do them both. We can do them both, right? We can't? Okay. We can't do two? Can we do like a medley? All right, yes, let's do both. Let's do a medley. Let's make it a medley. Switch over. We're going to do them both. We're doing both. Go on. The clock is ticking.
Okay.
Okay, well then, okay, never mind. We'll stretch it out there. Oh, you want to do Rolling Mandela? Or just this one?
No, just this one first.
Okay. Here we go. Let's help me out. You got it? No. Can you find it?
Talk time.
Here we go. There's a man who fought for freedom in South Africa.
Thank you, my brother.
Today we revere the name of Nelson Mandela. He led the fight against apartheid until we won.
Thank you, Stone.
So today South Africa is free.
It's free.
What?
I said today South Africa is free.
What?
Yeah.
Say.
And his work on earth is done. So Nelson Mandela, we thank you for answering the call. Your life, your work, your spirit, is an inspiration to us all. Woo!
Come on, y'all. Come on now.
All right, here we go. There we go. Here we go. Nelson Mandela, we love you. Nelson Mandela, we thank you. Nelson Mandela, we honor you. Nelson Mandela.
One more time. We say,
Nelson Mandela, we love you. Nelson Mandela, we thank you. Nelson Mandela, we honor you. Nelson Mandela. He was born in a village in South Africa in 1918 and went on to lead the most courageous struggle that the world has ever seen.
he was held captive in South African prison for 27 years.
27 years.
But he fought with truth, justice, and righteousness and had no fear.
Nelson Mandela, we love you. Nelson Mandela, we thank you. Nelson Mandela, we honor you. Nelson Mandela. He stood up for right and pointed out the truth so the whole world could see. And won the Nobel Peace Prize 1993.
1993.
He was declared an enemy by the racist government.
Racist government.
Then in 1994, the people elected him
The president, Nelson Mandela. We love you, Nelson Mandela. We thank you, Nelson Mandela. We honor you, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela.
Rock it out.
We love you, Nelson Mandela. We honor you, Nelson Mandela. We honor you, Nelson Mandela. He fought for freedom in South Africa until we won. We'll continue to fight for freedom until the work is done. He fought for freedom in South Africa until we won. We'll continue to fight for freedom until the work is done. He fought for freedom in South Africa until we won. We'll continue to fight for freedom until the work is done. He fought for freedom in South Africa until we won. We'll continue to fight for freedom until the work is done. He fought for freedom in South Africa until we won. We'll continue to fight for freedom until the work is done. We thank you, Nelson Mandela. We love you, Nelson Mandela. We love you, Nelson Mandela. We honor you, Nelson Mandela.
Okay, Katabazi coming at you again. So good to see everybody. This is the time in the Wose community known as the Litany of Sacrifice. And it gives us an opportunity to return a portion of that which we have received for the week back to the community, where we know that the community does a good job in stretching those dollars and getting work done here in the Wose community for our people and for our children. And we have a couple of princes this morning. Princess Kara and Princess Adia. Thank you, brother. And we got Brother Tamba on the keyboards. We got Brother Kukepra with the offerings envelopes and accepting your offerings. And I'm just going to read just one passage from the Hosea, from the book of prayers and sacred praises. And this is what Amenemope and his wife Hathor said. Page 15, passage number 1, the book of prayers and sacred praises. He says, "Blessed is one who sits in the hands of Amen-Ra, for it is he who directs the timid, who rescues the humble and the needy, who gives the breath of life to the one whom he loves and grants him or her a long life in the west of Thebes. O my God, Lord of lords, Amen-Ra, Lord of Karnak, give me your hand and save me. Shine upon me and sustain me. You are the only God, and there is none like you. You are Ra, who rises in the heavens, and the God who created men and women. It is you who hears the prayers of one who calls on him, who saves a man and woman from the hands of the violent, and who makes the Nile rise and flow for those who are in him. Ra is the perfect guide for everyone. When he rises, men and women live, and their hearts are lifted up. When they see the one who gives the breath of life to those who are in the egg, who make people and birds to live, who supplies even food for mice in their holes as well as for worms and fleas. May he grant us an honorable burial after an old age, so that we may be safe in his hands. We give thanks for those words coming from the Hosea, the book of prayers and sacred praises. And we could find the Litany of Sacrifice in the black binder, page number 15. We could find that, and let us all stand and read and recite together. Save us, O Holy One, by your name. Vindicate us by your might. Hear my prayer, divine protector. Listen to the words of my mouth. How can we repay the Holy One for the gifts that have been given to us? We will lift up the cup of salvation and call upon the God of our ancestors. We will fulfill our vows to our Creator in the presence of all our people. Gladly we bring our sacrifices to you. We will praise your name, O Amen-Ra, for it is good. Umoja, unity. We shall strive to maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Kujicha Galia. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. We shall build and maintain our communities together. Our brothers and sisters' problems shall be ours to solve together. Ujima. Nia, purpose. We shall make our collective vocation the building and development of our community and the restoration of our people to our traditional greatness. Kaumba. Together, Imani, faith. We will believe with all our hearts in our Creator, our people, and in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. Amen-Ra. Candles of the Nguzo Saba are burning brightly, reflecting the spirits of the Wose community. Brother Tayamba continues to play, Minister Greg on the congas. Kneeling pads have been laid at the front for those that may wish to come forward. And you others, you may assume a comfortable position at your chair, and I'll take a few moments to bless these sacrifices. O Holy One, the one God, you who called into this creation. O Holy One, we thank you for making us human. We thank you for putting us in this particular geographical spot on the planet. And we thank you for the Wose community. We thank you for the opportunity to study, to learn, to reflect, and to grow. We pray and we ask, O Holy One, that you continue to send us teachers, continue to lead us to the path where we gain new knowledge, new insights, that we may better know our purpose, that we may better serve in your creation, O Holy One. Thank you for the sacrifices today. Thank you for each and every one that came out this morning and shared of that which they have. We ask blessings upon each and every one, O Holy One. We ask that you send that blessing right now, O Holy One. Be with us throughout the remainder of this service. Bless the one that will bring a message that clears away much of the fog of life and allows us to move forward another day. And we thank you for each day, O Holy One. We don't take the days so lightly as we once did. We recognize and we acknowledge the violence of our times these days, where human life seems to be of much less worth. And especially if that life is encased in a black skin. We ask for your protection, O Holy One. We ask for your guidance. We ask that you continue to be with us. Grant us your love, grant us your protection, that we may fulfill our purpose and serve you more fully. These blessings we ask in the name of sacrifice and ancestors that came before us, that shed blood and gave up their lives and lost limbs and broken bones, that we may be free. Ashe. Amen. Ra.
Good afternoon, family. How's everybody doing? Good. You look good. Just looking around, see who's here. We still here. We have not gone anywhere. Say Ashe. If you know God is good, say Ashe. You know the Most High bring us through Phillip Reed's time. And to get to the day, that's a great God. That's a powerful God. That's a mighty spirit. Because you know, I'm sure there were people in that time period in 1700s, 1800s that was probably thinking, we might not make it. We might not get through this with a reasonable sense of a good mind. So we say Ashe. You know, and it probably was moments like there was a few people around sometimes, and folks was probably like, man, what we going to do? You know, I got to believe that they had moments where they were like, what we going to do, y'all? Ashe. And so we made it through those times. To show up here in this place in this time for these children, we say Ashe. We give thanks to the Creator known by many names, sometimes known as Amun-Ra, sometimes known as Ptah, sometimes known as Oladamari, sometimes known as Nomo, sometimes known as Ngai, sometimes known as Jehovah, sometimes known as Allah, sometimes known simply as I am, but that one great divine energy, that one great mighty force, that one great spirit that is able to do all things well, and we say Ashe. We give thanks and praise to our ancestors. We call their names not as a roll call, but to remind ourselves of their struggles, their successes, their achievements, in spite of, on these shores, and then before we got here, because of. So here, in spite of, and before the Atlantic crossing, because of a system of values, because of a system of family, because of a system of economics, because of a system of politics. For most of our history, the Holocaust, Ma'afa part of our history is but a small part that should not define who we are. It is simply a dynamic of history, a reason that God put us in this place in this time, maybe to humanize these other folks. Ashe. And I know that's a hard road to hoe, as they say. But that might be why we're here, is to bring civilization to this part of the world. In this time, despite Ferguson, despite Oakland, despite all the places around Chicago, folks are shooting each other up in Chicago, y'all. Detroit, New Orleans, all these places. So we have a reason to be here. And we're not sad about it. We just open-eyed about it. Ashe. And we give honor and praise our elders and ask the elders in the room for permission to continue, if it's all right. And they say it's okay. It's great. Give the elders a round of applause. It is definitely the last Sunday in August. Because, every year, I've been part of this for a long time. Every year, I'll be like, okay, we're going to make it through August. We're going to make it through August because attendance goes down and people go on vacations and we start seeing folks. And it's a really busy time because it's like the precursor to school start. Not only even if you're not involved in Leoma Day, other schools taking kids to college, making sure you make choices. Because as parents, all of us had to make choices about what school this year. And then you get a break like when you decide on middle school, you get a break for 3 years. Then you go like, okay, what are we going to do about high school? Then it's like you get a break. And then, what are we going to do about college? You get a break. And then graduate school, they on their own. So I got a break, period. Ashe. So this month is no different. And I just want to talk for a few minutes and share some ideas with you, remind you of some things. Back to school, back to basics. We are making bricks. Ashe. Somebody know the reference I'm talking about. We're making bricks. All right. I'm going to ask you to find the passage for the day. It's from, let's see, I lost my page. Let's see. Here we go. Page 64 to Hosea. If you can turn to that page. Back to school, back to basics. We are making bricks. And while you're finding that passage in Hosea, page 64, I'm going to take the second paragraph of the first passage. By show of hands, how many of you have ever been to school? Okay. Everybody. That's interesting. That's one of those things we have a common experience because we all have been to somebody's school. We might not have grown up in church, mosque, temple, but pretty much everybody went to somebody's school. Ashe. And the ancestors in Kemet in the Nile Valley were great educators. They were great educators. So much of what they wrote, what they recorded, what we read in Hosea is instructions. But in their language, they would say sebayit. It's wise instructions about how to live, how to do this, how to be in leadership, how to be a good follower, how to handle your household matters, how to be in relationship. It's a lot of teaching. It's education. And seba, or sebayit, that word has two determinative in it, two symbols in it that in addition to the sound of the word gives us some indication of how they thought about education. The first one was they had a person holding a staff, or in some cases you might say a stick, that represented knowledge, represented authority of eldership, might even represented, spare the rod kind of conversation, right? Then they also had a star, and that star represented enlightenment, reaching for the stars. All those metaphors we have about pushing and aiming higher, our students, and this meant lifelong learners, were always encouraged to be your best. Do whatever you can do in your education. So this morning, I want to remind us to re-engage around what was it like for us when we were children, what is it like for our children back to school, to go back to the basics. If we read this passage together, we're going to read the second paragraph, page 64. Examine every matter that you may understand it. Do not say, I am learned, but rather set yourself to become wise. Be gentle and patient, then your character will be beautiful. It is in the development of character that instruction succeeds. Learn the structure and functioning of the sky. Learn the structure and functioning of the earth. One of the most important lines, one of the most important lines in the entire Hosea, I think, is in this paragraph. It is in the development of character that instruction succeeds. Now, these were people who had command of the sciences, geometry, material sciences, nilometry, agricultural sciences, political sciences, sociology, all the things, those so-called liberal arts that the Greeks then took and renamed. But our folks were in command of that. But then this passage, they didn't say, it is in the development of good math skills that instruction succeeds. It is in the development of good reading and writing skills that instruction succeeds. And obviously, they thought those things were important. But the most important thing they said was character. the kind of person you are, how you interact with people, how you move with people. And I believe that one of the biggest things that any school, any educational institution can do is it encourages character. It encourages you how to behave, how to be appropriate, how to talk to people, how to move in the world, how to ask questions. Those are part of character development. And I think that Ile in particular has a great history of character development. When our children leave us, and there used to be times on the playground, you'd hear kids talking like, and this is how you know you're being successful. When they start talking like this, well, you know, that's not showing emoji. I've heard that on the playground. And and there's a certain cultivation of that. Like, what do you mean? Well, if you say that, you must know emoji means unity. It must mean we're supposed to be together. It's the way that, yesterday we were here working, and it was the way that when Adia, who was going into our kindergarten program, saw her BFF, her good friend Michelle. Man, anybody who's been around the two of them know. It was like all action stopped when Vicky's car pulled up. It's like, Michelle, Adia. It was like, that's like, bam. So that's unity, right? So they, and a lot of children, what we see in our school represents a certain kind of unity. Umoja, and it's just one of those ways of thinking about character development. The same advice. I want you to just think back for a minute. If you had a parent, a caregiver, a grandmother, somebody who got you ready, got your mind ready for school. Just think about that person just for a second. Who was that person in your life when you got ready to go to the first day of school, no matter what level you were at? Who was the person in your head? So when you showed up to school, you had an echo of like certain things you're supposed to do and certain things you're not supposed to do. Ashe? We all have that. Now what's interesting about it, when you start thinking about what kind of advice, what kind of, mandate, because advice sounds like optional, right? Like somebody give you advice, you could choose to do it or not. I'm not talking about that. Now I'm talking about the hardwired DNA, you must do this, or when you get home, you got a problem. Right? Whatever that set of ideas was, that's the basics that I want to talk about just for a few minutes. This is the basics of what my mother and father gave me. And this past week I was in Arkansas, and Trudy went with me to start this process of moving things out of my parents' home into my house, and my sisters get a chance to come get some things, and filled up a little moving cube and had the movers move it. But as I was going through things, my mother and father were both educators, so I'm finding all this material, school stuff, and I'm going like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Some of it's 40, 50 years old worth of stuff, right? And among my mother's and father's stuff, I found a set of letters. And it was very powerful for me personally because the letters were letters that my mother wrote to my father in 1967 when she was in graduate school in Lincoln, Nebraska. The kids went, my dad stayed in Arkansas. We went to Lincoln, Nebraska, lived there for a year. So let me just explain something. In Lincoln, Nebraska in 1967, it was about that many black people, right? And I snapped fast. You might have missed the snap, right? It's just, we got to Lincoln. I remember that day. We got in on a Saturday, and we driving through downtown Lincoln. And I'm second grader. I'm kind of like, oh, this is cool, but this is real different because I don't see nobody that looks like me, like except my sisters, that my mom and dad in the car. They're about the only people. And we saw this one man, Mr. McHolmes, walking up the street on the other side of Main Street in Lincoln, and my parents flagged him down, like waving and stuff. And they was like, hey, he welcomed us to town, introduced us to his family. Me and my little sister went to a school. It was 300 kids, Prescott Elementary School, 300 kids. 2 black kids, me and her, right? That is not Ile Day. I did not have a Michelle Adia moment, okay, when I showed up. And my mother was writing letters, and she would send our work home. All of us had to do a little work. My sister was in the 7th grade, I was in the 2nd grade, and my other sister was in, I guess it would have been kindergarten. And we would send home a little work. And my mother wrote my father a note that said, well, Greg's teacher in the 2nd grade classroom, I don't know about her. And I had not thought about this person in a really long time. It was just like this white lady, to me in the 2nd grade, it seemed like she was ancient. She had one of those big whitish blue hairdo things that white women do, right? And I don't remember her name or nothing. I just kind of remember this stern kind of person. And the note was, well, she sends home all these mimeographs, worksheets. And y'all know mimeograph is like the purple ink and the da-da-da. And on stuff that he already knows, that he don't even need to practice. I think she's just putting in hours till retirement. So, your mother was that parent. Yeah, she was that parent. Well, she a school teacher too. I mean, it didn't, you don't get no break from Bobby Hodge. It was just like, no. But there was something about it every level. I remember going to school. I remember getting ready because having two parents, my mother was a principal of a school in the last 15 years of her career. So this time of year at Ileoma Day feels familiar to me. Like, this feels familiar. Now, we had a few days, the insiders, so the council of elders, for y'all know, last few days, it's been a whole bunch of communication going back and forth. People have been freaking out. We're not going to be ready for school to start. What about the classrooms? Y'all know, I'm telling the truth. Everybody's been like, ah! And it doesn't help that the kitchen's not ready, right? So everybody's freaking out. I grew up with that freak out feeling, except it was not a freak out feeling. Every year, my mother usually start 2 or 3 weeks before the teachers come, and then when the teachers come, and we would be part of it. We'd be carrying boxes and helping with bulletin boards and all this stuff. But my mom's thing was always just be ready for the first day. Whatever happens, happens. But when the teacher's in the front of that classroom with those excited children on the first day of class, that's what you're driving toward, right? All the other stuff, let it go. And people was getting on each other's nerves before school even started. Same here. So there's something about this that feels very familiar to me, right? And it doesn't make it any easier necessarily. It's just familiar, right? And the kitchen remodeling is, see, if you've been around Rose long enough, you have memory of things, you know that this ain't the first time we did a big project, and it was a little off track in terms of timing, and we had to figure out what was going to happen, and there was a lot of dust and stuff. So, for example, when we got these fire sprinklers put in, somebody may not remember that. Everybody's like, well, how are we going to have service with no fire, with no room? Because this room was tore up. The stuff upstairs was torn up, right? When they hung this ceiling, there's another opportunity. What are we going to do? How are we going to do? Calm down, right? That's the lesson in all of it, like, calm down. And I do understand the importance of that kitchen, because you have to understand that reading is important, writing is important, mathematics is important, history is important, identity is important. Mama Rose's food is important. If you went to the graduation in June to a person, our graduates going off to high school and stuff, everybody got up and gave a little speech. Everybody. I want to thank Baba Jahi for the great class and Baba Bubakar, blah, 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 blah. But really who I want to thank is Mama Rose. Shout out to Mama Rose. Big ups to Mama Rose. It was like, we could just shut all that classroom stuff down and just do food, right? But there's something about it. It's part of the institution, right? It's one of the basics. And the beautiful part about all of this has been the sense of sort of collective ownership, that everybody has kind of been collectively anxious about all of this, collectively nervous about it, collectively going like, we need to know what's going on so we can own a part of the work. And so yesterday it was beautiful to see folks that were here. I want to thank Mama Ngina in particular and others that getting this room together, because there was a lot of dust and all that. Mama Darnisha is setting the pace, because I think her classroom is ready to go. She's like, I'm Thursday, come on, let's go, right? Thank Mama Marsha and Akanke and everybody who was here yesterday. The Awakoye family was in and out. Mama Rose was representing. Everybody was getting something done. So you could take a walk upstairs before you leave today and kind of see the state of things. And they may need some help. Ask Baba Jahi if there's some volunteer opportunities there. But that notion of back to basics, it made me think about all of this yesterday. And it reminds me of the story I heard about Tuskegee Institute, Tuskegee University now, and this is where this "we're making bricks" part comes from. And there's something about building your own institution. There's something about pulling it all together. I'm going to just read a passage from Booker T. Washington's book, Up From Slavery, because there's some lessons in this in terms of how we operate at Ileoma Day. From the very beginning, at Tuskegee, and this is his words. I was determined to have the students do not only the agricultural and domestic work, but to have them erect their own buildings. My plan was to have them, while performing this service, taught the latest and best methods of labor so that the school would not only get the benefit of their efforts, but the students themselves would be taught to see not only utility in labor, but beauty and dignity would be taught. In fact, how to lift labor up from mere drudgery and toil, and would learn to love work for its own sake. My plan was not to teach them to work in the old way, but to show them how to make the forces of nature, air, water, steam, electricity, horsepower, assist them in their labor. At first, many advised against the experiment of having the buildings erected by the labor of the students, but I was determined to stick to it. I told those who doubted the wisdom of the plan that I knew that our first buildings would not be so comfortable or be so complete in their finish as the buildings erected by the experienced hands of outside workmen, but that in the teaching of civilization, self-help, and self-reliance, the erection of buildings by the students themselves would more than compensate for any lack of comfort or fine finish. During the now 19 years of existence of the Tuskegee School, the plan of having the buildings erected by student labor has been adhered to. In this time, 40 buildings. 40. In this time, 40 buildings, counting small and large, have been built, and all except 4 are almost wholly the product of student labor. As an additional result, hundreds of men are now scattered throughout the South who receive their knowledge of mechanics while being taught how to erect these buildings. Skill and knowledge are now handed down from one set of students to another in this way until at the present time, a building of any description or size can be constructed wholly by our instructors and students from the drawing of the plans to the putting in of electric fixtures without going off the grounds for a single workman. In the early days of the school, I think my most trying experience was the matter of brick making. As soon as we got the farm work reasonably well started, we directed our next efforts toward the industry of making bricks. We needed these for use in connection with the erection of our own buildings, but there was also another reason for establishing this industry. There was no brickyard in the town, and in addition to our own needs, there was a demand for bricks in the general market. This is where it goes off a little bit, but I understand. I had always sympathized with the children of Israel in their task of making bricks without straw, but ours was the task of making bricks with no money and no experience. To fast forward on this, you have to have a kiln to fire bricks. They tried on 3 different occasions to have kilns, and each time the kiln failed. It didn't work. He says, the failure of this last kiln left me without a single dollar with which to make another experiment. Most of the teachers advised the abandoning of the effort to make bricks. In the midst of my troubles, I thought of a watch which had come into my possession years before. I took the watch to the city of Montgomery, which is not far distant, and placed it in a pawn shop. I secured cash upon it in the amount of $15, with which to renew the brick-making experiment. I returned to Tuskegee, and with the help of the $15, rallied our rather demoralized and discouraged forces and began a 4th attempt to make bricks. This time, I am glad to say, we were successful. Before I got hold of any money, the time limit on my watch had expired, and I have never seen it since, but I have never regretted the loss of it. Ashe. Ancestors showing us and leading the way. Back to the basics, back to school. Some advice, and some of this might sound familiar. There's a connection between the advice you got going to go to school and how to go to school and your spiritual path. It's real interesting to look at the similarities and the things that people would say about going to school and being at school and doing the things that you're supposed to do. Number one, people would say, do your best. That's the advice my mother and father always gave me, and it would be the debrief too. If you got a grade back, a paper, a report card, whatever, and you went through it, the basic question was, but did you do your best? Not did you do what other people thought you should do, but did you self-reflect and know that you did your best? Same is true in spiritual matters. Are you doing your best? Are you praying, meditating, keeping centered, being able to use all of the tools that we've been sharing with each other for years to do your best? Another piece of advice, be on time and in attendance. You got to show up. If you want to learn something in school, you got to show up. That's why they keep attendance records. And we used to get, perfect attendance scores. I don't know if we still do that now. But perfect attendance would be the thing that if you didn't do well and whatever, you said, well, I was here every day. Right? I showed up. That's something in and of itself. Just showing up, right? Another one. Ask good questions. You may not always know the answer about something, but ask good questions. I've started asking my children that over the years, not what did you learn today, but what did you ask today? Because when you ask somebody about what they ask, they have to be an active learner. It's not just what somebody said to them and they regurgitating it back to you. It's like, but no, what question did you have in the science class? What question did you have about the history project? Ask a lot of questions. Be curious. Learn to play well with others. Ashe. When you go to school, you got to learn how to play well with others. You cannot act a fool with other people and think that your classmates are going to like you. Ashe. It's the same in a spiritual institution. You got to learn to play well with others. Watch what you say, how you say it, what goes on. All the stress that we had over the last few days. Just be careful about what you say. Respect and listen to your teachers, even the ones you think you don't like. Ashe. Respect and listen to your teachers. There'll be somebody who is, quote, your teacher in a spiritual context that may be acting in a certain way that actually tests your spiritual makeup, tests your character, tests how you behave. Your teacher is not necessarily the person who's standing in front of the room. Sometimes the teacher is the person you have an interaction with, and you're trying to figure out, why are they acting like this with me? Why? That becomes the question that we have to ask ourselves. So respecting even the person in your life who is acting in a non-ma'at-like way, listen to that lesson. What's the lesson? Even the people you don't like. Get in, and this is maybe for older students, but maybe it applies for younger students. Get in a study group and ask your friends for help. Study with folks. I didn't learn that lesson until I got to law school. If I had done that in college, I'd probably been a much better student. Because a lot of us get trained to think it's me, my own individual thing I got to do. Most people don't operate like that. Other students, and I'll just generalize this, the Asian students that I went to school with, they had little study groups, right? Some of the white kids had study groups, but the black kids like, I don't need no study group. I got this. I'm smart. I'm at Northwestern, Howard, Stanford, whatever, because I'm smart. Yeah, you might be smart, but you'll be smarter if you hang out with other people. Other people make you smart. Another one, have a good attitude. Ashe? Show up with a good attitude. Share with others. Be helpful. Get a good grade in citizenship. This is old school stuff, citizenship. Remember that? Some of y'all just have, get a grade in citizenship. And all it meant was, how did you behave with other people? How did you act? The same is true in spiritual communities. Show good spiritual citizenship. Ashe? Keep your hands to yourself. Some people know what I'm talking about, because people are like, you're always hitting somebody, poking somebody. I had a kid in junior high school named Ted Williams. Used to sit behind me in Mr. Goodrum's, not Goodrum, Spadoni's, not that y'all would know, Coach Spadoni's class. And Ted would we'd be sitting in class, and all of a sudden I feel somebody thumping my ear. And this went on for weeks. It was like, I'd be like, and of course, I'm the one that gets busted out, because when I say stop, the teacher's looking at me like, Greg Hodge, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, he's like, I'm asking you what's wrong with you, not what somebody else did to you. But I'll be like, Ted, stop messing with my ear. To this day, we laugh about this. But keep your hands to yourself. Be in the right attire. There's a certain way you dress for school. Ashe. There's, we got uniforms. The Eloma Day kids are excited about the new uniforms, I think. And it's the same in spiritual work. Be in the right sort of attire. When it's time to dance, be in dance clothes, right? Have your tools with you and be ready to use them. When kids would show up to school without a pencil, without a pen, without a notebook, without a 3-ring binder, without a spiral notebook, without a, fill in the blank, you're not ready for school. If you show up without those things, you're not ready. If you show up to Wose and don't meditate, don't pray, don't have something to offer, then how are you bringing your tools to bear? A few more and then I'll close this out. Have the right books. Have the right books. If you're there for a math class, have your math book. If you're here for a Wose class, a Wose period, a Wose time, have your Husia. Have whatever other materials that's inspiring to you. All right? Last few. Stay at home when you are sick. Ashe? Don't be so generous that everybody got to get sick with you. Like, stay at home. If you got a really bad case of the flu, stay at home. If you are spiritually sick, I'm not necessarily saying stay at home, but leave that spiritually messed up attitude out the door, outside. Leave that somewhere else. Don't bring that and share that part with other people. Bless others who may in turn bless you. Don't cheat and don't look on other people's paper. All right? Spiritually speaking, you can't cheat. Really. You can't take the benefit of somebody else's spiritual work. You got to do your own work. Learn from everyone and every situation. So today, as we think about going back to school, our basics for us are think before you act, think before you speak. Think might, speak might, and do might. Follow the 10 virtues. I must have control of my thoughts, control of my action, devotion to a purpose, faith in the ability of my teachers to teach me the truth, faith in my ability to assimilate the truth and wield the truth, free from resentment on the experience of wrongdoing, free from resentment on the experience of persecution, cultivate the ability to know the difference between the real and the unreal, cultivate the ability to know the difference between right and wrong. Follow the Declaration of Innocence, use the Nguzo Saba. Examine every matter that you may understand it. Don't say, I know these things, but rather say, I'm curious. I want to know more. Know that it is in the development of character that instruction succeeds. Ashe. May I ask you to stand with me if you will.